Welcome to the show today. Thanks for tuning in. We have a great guest on the show today. Her name is Lori. Funny story about Lori. You guys know I like to share a little bit of humor, I guess, with you guys, or a little bit of something special about our guest. Lori here, every time she opens up the peanut butter jar or jam, that little part on top, like uncut, how do you describe it?
The surface,
The surface.
piercing the surface.
Piercing the surface.
Ah,
Lori, Lori's golden thing is piercing the surface of peanut butter or jelly or cheese whiz, taking that first little spoonful. So, um, yeah.
that's true.
So, what want to say hi to our guests? Want to say hi to our listeners today?
Yes, I would. I'd like to say, yeah. Hi, how you doing? I hope that you're doing well out there wherever you're listening from. And I'm really honored to be here. Thank you so much, Matt, for asking me. I'm very humbled, and it's amazing to be in a place where I feel like I do have something to say, and I'm quite excited about this today
Awesome.
from where I came from. Yes.
I'm excited too. So like I like to start every show off. What's one thing you're grateful for today and why?
Today, I am so grateful to have clarity of thought because I spent in my active using life, I was a blackout person. Um, so the novelty of being able to remember what happened yesterday still hasn't worn off. So clarity of thought is paramount, like being able to direct and focus and concentrate.
I can totally relate. I
Hmm.
sometimes think about that too when I think about gifts of recovery is being able to separate feelings from logic,
Hmm.
to see the difference. And it's a great gift. Do you want to share with our listeners what your childhood growing up was like?
Ooh, okay. Well, I grew up on a dairy farm in New Brunswick. I right next to the St. John River. I could hear the fish jumping at night. In a lot of ways, it was paradise. And I come from a beautiful family. I have five brothers and two sisters. I'm the last one. If my brother Francis had been a Francine, I wouldn't be here. Um, my perspective on it was like as long as I can remember, I felt different from my family, and it's not anything that they did. It was just that's the feeling that I grew up with, is that I was the black sheep. I was almost alien, is how I felt. Um, and Yeah, my parents were alcoholics. That's how I would describe them, and it was pretty random. Like mostly they would contain it to the weekend, but sometimes I would come home on a Wednesday night or a Tuesday night, and they would just be loaded. And it was really rough. That was rough, right? Hmm.
Are you the old? Well, you said you were the
I'm the
youngest. Was it
youngest. Yeah,
all like when you said if you were Francine, you wouldn't be here? Do you have all older brothers?
I have five brothers and two sisters.
Okay, so that's a
Yeah, so
big
they
family.
wanted another girl. Yeah,
Okay.
so yeah.
What was your first experience with taking a drink or a drug? How old were you?
I was 9 years old, and I remember thinking, well, it must be really good, this alcohol, because they do it all the time. And there was nobody else at home. So I started my very first like addiction by myself in isolation. So I took their rum. It was Bacardi, and it was like they drank it with water. It was awful, and I got drunk and I fell down the basement stairs and I got sick. And I remember thinking, this is horrible, right? Why? Like, I couldn't understand why my parents were into that. Um, and then when I was 11 years old, I found what I would term like I started smoking pot. And that was like I have a history in my childhood. I have some big issues, had some big issues to deal with. Like, I, I don't want to say that I was a victim, but sexual abuse is part of my story. And so when I found dope at the age of 11, I feel as if it changed my life. It saved my life. It gave me something to look forward to. Um, so that was when I was 11, and I found that it was a place that I felt like I fit in. That was the first place that I felt that I fit in. And my parents sent me to a French school. Like I said, I'm from New Brunswick, and my father was French, and so I was termed bilingual, but we didn't speak French at home. We spoke English. So I was sent to a school where I didn't speak the language. So I never felt like I fit in there either. and I wasn't allowed to speak. So I think I jokingly say that's why I talk so much today. Okay. But I do have a lot to say today. So there's a difference between talking and having something to say.
Mhm.
But when I was 11, that's when it really sort of like took off for me. And it was wonderful. Really.
So was it siblings that did you do it with your siblings, or how did you was it people at school that you first did it with?
It
So,
was a girl at school. Yeah. She said, "Hey, I want to show you something." We went into the bathroom and she showed me this joint. She unrolled it and she says, "It's Acapulco Gold." And I was like, "Ooh." Um, so that's where it began. Yeah.
progressive. Did you how fast would you say it progressed, or timeline? Like, did things pick up, or did you start using it daily? At what point?
It progressed really quickly. By the time I was 14, I think I just between 11 and 14, I don't have much recollection of where I got my dope or how, but it must have been my friend at school. That's how I got it, through her. So she knew people, but then I was introduced, or there was a drug dealer that lived just down the road from me, and he was 21 years old. And my self-esteem, I had extremely low self-esteem. Like I suffered with it. It was bad, and I never thought of myself as being attractive. I really had very low self-esteem. And so I threw myself at this person. He was my drug dealer. He was 21 years old. I was 14. And yeah, so he ended up, I thought we were going to be married. Um, but you're talking about progression. It went really quickly. I started selling dope. Um, let's see. I'm getting Yeah, so I ended up getting pregnant when I was 15, and I gave my daughter up for adoption. And that was the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. Um, and I vowed at that time that that would never happen to me again. That if I was ever to have children, that I would be in a stable relationship, that I would be married, and that there would be enough money to support these children.
Makes sense. Um, I know this is probably a touchy subject. Do you have any contact with
I do.
that child today?
Yes, yes, we've met each other, and it's amazing. She lives in Halifax, and we have so much in common. And but she's not an addict at all. She's an artist. Um,
Nice.
she's amazing.
Any of your family members, did they follow that path too, or were you kind of like a lone wolf, I guess, with the whole addiction?
Um, I would say they all drink alcohol. None of them ever did drugs the way I did. Like, but alcohol is a drug. That's what I learned. I
Mhm.
learned that in recovery. Alcohol is most certainly a drug. So they're functional. Maybe if they are alcoholics, they're very functional.
Makes
Th-
sense.
th- Yeah.
Makes sense. Um, how did things? When did you take your first hard drug, or like from 14? After actually, let's back this up. After having your child, how did your life change at that point? Like, did you view things different? Did you find you spiraled a little bit harder due to making a hard decision?
I was devastated during that process because I was betrayed by this person that I thought that we were going to be married. Um, yes, I visualized a clamshell coming up, that I was inside an enormous clamshell, and there was nobody who was going to penetrate that. There was nobody or anything. So, yes, I absolutely did. Of course, using was just I used any chance I got. You know,
Yeah,
But I met somebody when I was 16. Um, I walked in, and he changed my life. He was a very positive person. And he became my partner, and we were together for 6 years.
okay. Did you guys use it all? Like, was a part addiction? You said he's positive. Was addiction a part of your story at
Oh,
that
we
point?
were hippies. We were
No.
dope smoking hippies. I mean,
It's not that
we
answer,
both
eh?
had 18-inch hair. We measured it, leather headbands, and I had feathers and beads in my hair. And oh no, we moved. He had moved to Saskatchewan with his family when he just shortly after that we met, and we maintained a long distance relationship for 2 years. And then when he was 18, I talked him into moving back to New Brunswick, which he did. We got our own apartment together, and then we moved to Saskatchewan to be with his grandmother to help her, quote unquote. She was 86 years old. We just prolonged her going into a nursing home for a year. So we lived, I remember we moved to Weyburn, Saskatchewan, and yeah, we had mushrooms taped to his legs on the plane. We brought dope with us because we thought there's not going to be any dope in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. Um, but there is dope everywhere, right? I do remember thinking moving there, well, nobody's going to know me there. The shame of having a child out of wedlock. I was brought up in a Catholic family, and I felt this tremendous shame and judgment by the people around me. Um, uh, yeah, so when we moved to Weyburn, I remember thinking distinctively, well, this is a new start. Nobody knows me here, so I'm going to be different. But what I've learned um, is that wherever I go, I take my baggage with me. I
Hmm.
take my past with me. I am wherever I'm at. So,
Yeah,
mhm.
makes sense. So fast forwarding a little bit, at what point did you realize like you think you might have a problem?
Oh, I knew I had a problem with dope when I was 16 years old, and I started trying to quit then.
Okay.
That's when I started like I relapsed for 12 years before I even heard about um, recovery that is for people like me.
How'd you try doing it on your own?
Just white knuckling it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, willpower isn't really
Oh,
doesn't
I
really.
tried. Well, I tried things like weightlifting, vegetarianism, running, self-help books, um, astrology, numerology, anyology. Yeah.
Hmm. At what point, like, what were some of the lows that you hit? Like, what were some of your bottoms you would say along the way before your clean date today?
Ooh. Being a blackout drunk, being a blackout person that I would wake up in my apartment and I lived by myself and I would check my body for cuts and contusions and bruises. I would look to see if I had any money left. I worked in the bar. I worked as a bartender. So it was money hand over fist, but I never had any because I just blew it. But when one morning I remember coming to and I was creeping around my apartment looking to see if there was anybody else there. Um, yeah, so that was a moment. There's so many bottoms that, whew, you know, yeah.
It's hard, yeah. Like it's
Hmm.
thankfully it's the past, right? And all it is a memory at this point, right? That we don't have
Hmm.
to relive it and just kind of reflect, and we also get to see how far we've come from those days, right?
Yeah, so I had a lot of dysfunction. So when I was living by myself, because I grew up in a home, it was quite chaotic and dysfunctional. Okay, my mother was a hoarder. Okay, like World War II mentality. You can't throw anything out; you might need it. And so when I finally was living by myself, I had an apartment by myself. I became like an extreme cleanaholic. Like I used to clean the tract of the patio door with a Q-tip.
Mm.
And I would sit there and I would look at the ceiling and I would wonder, how can I clean that stucco ceiling? I would invite people over to my place so that they would dirty my ashtrays so that I would have something to clean after they left. Okay. So one morning when I woke up, I came to and I looked across and I saw on my dresser there was a brown paper bag and it was terrifying. I remember like my heart was pounding, like, what is in this? And when I opened it up, it was a can of sockeye salmon. So I remember thinking, oh man, I must have been feeling homesick. You know what I mean? Because I paid $7 in 1980, whatever, for a can of sockeye salmon at the 7-Eleven. Anyway, but that moment before opening it, I just thought, what's in there? Because it stood out at a place.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Um, Take us up to the point where so how long ago? How long have you been in the rooms right now, or how long have you been clean for?
It'll be 29 years on July 4th.
That's amazing.
It is
That's amazing.
amazing. And it
That's
has
amazing.
been the best trip of my life. I am so grateful.
Yeah. What was your introduction to recovery? How did you find out
Okay. Yeah.
about it?
Yeah. So I was a bartender and I'm a friendly person. Like I was a star bartender. I was really good at what I did. And that's an interesting point. I vowed never to be like my mother. Right. So I thought, well, smoking weed, you know what I mean? But when I became a bartender, I thought, well, I better learn to drink because I was a blackout drunk. Like I was a problem. People, when I was 12, 13 years old, my friends were always trying to stash me in places because I was out of control, right? Um, so I was a bartender and I was working, and I'm a friendly type of person, get to know somebody. If you sat at my bar more than twice, I would commit your name to memory. Um, but there was this one person, and the hackles on the back of my neck would stand up. One time, literally, I knew that he entered the room. It was a long room, and the hackles on the back of my neck stood up. My back was to the wall, and I knew that he had entered the bar. I never wanted him to come back. I never encouraged him at all. But he came there daily. I worked in the West Edmonton Mall, and one day he came in, and I thought he ordered food. Something had changed, and I knew there's something different about this guy. And then one day he ordered food, and I knew, oh my God, he stopped drinking. And it's like his whole personality had changed. And I I had hit a bottom with alcohol on June 23rd of 1993. I I just couldn't live like that anymore. And I had the sensation that I had two choices. Either I kill myself or I change the way I live. And um, I had bought, I'm a readaholic. I have 1,000 books, maybe more, in my basement, and I continue to buy them. I'll always have books. Um, and I had purchased a book called Inside Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was a book written by one of the founders, his wife. And I had read that book, and I knew, well, you go to meetings, and I had wrote the Serenity prayer down because I had never heard such a thing, and I had that on my closet door, so I would read that every morning when I got up out of bed. Before my feet hit the floor, I would read the Serenity prayer, and it wasn't just rote. I said it with feeling, like I really wanted that. I want serenity more than anything. I had never known a moment's peace in my life, but I wanted that. And the other thing that I wrote down was there's no circumstance so bad or so good that one drink won't make worse. So I definitely distinguished. I thought that there was a difference between alcohol and drugs. In my mind, there was. But so I had known about these meetings and that people give phone numbers to one another and all this stuff. And one day, so it was 23 days into it, I think it was, or however many days, whatever, 16 days. I was sober for 16 days, and I wanted this guy to hear me. So I was talking to somebody at the bar, and I said loudly, yeah, it's day 16 for me. And he quietly said, did I hear you say it's day 16 for you? I said, yes. He goes, it's day 43 for me. And I was like, oh, wow. And he goes, yeah. Um, and for some reason, I thought that he needed my help. I had a warped thinking, like this mentality of that I was going to save somebody. Like, never mind that I wasn't even functioning as a human being, really. I mean, I had a job and I kept an apartment and house plants, but I was at it. It was crazy. My life was insane. So I had this rescuing mentality, and I thought, well, this guy's obviously going to need my help, is what I thought. And so I put a piece of paper in front of him with a pen, and he said, "Well, she obviously wants me to write something profound." So he wrote down his phone number and his name, and he goes, "If you're feeling like picking up, pick up the phone instead, unless you're smoking up, because that's my drug of choice." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" Well, like, what do you mean, unless he goes, "Well, I go to," and he told me about this fellowship that he goes to. And I said, "Well, what's that?" And he said, "Well, it's like AA, only the people are cooler." And I was like, "Oh, well, I want to be with the cool people." Like my ego, it was a hook. You see, this source energy or whatever it is, God, whatever you want to call it, it does work through people, places, and things.
Mhm.
And it certainly, he introduced me to the fellowship where I still reside today. It's my home. It's it enabled me to get clean and to stay clean. And he called me on a Sunday. The phone rang, and weirdly, I knew it was him. And that back in the day, the phone was attached to the wall. Ring, right? It was so weird. Like, and I was like, hello. And he goes, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Do you want to go for, coffee, whatever? and I was started sputtering and I was all nervous, and it was a Sunday, it was July 4th, and I was like, no, I'm moving. He goes, "You're moving today?" I said, "Well, no, like I was moving at the end of July." And he goes, "Look, no big deal." He says, "Man, I just thought we'd go for coffee and then go to a meeting." And when he said the word meeting, I knew that I had to meet him. I said, "Look, man, I can't do coffee. I can't, but I'll meet you at this meeting." And I didn't drive. I didn't have a driver's license. I had a phobia of driving. I was an obia when I rolled in, when I crawled into recovery. So I asked my cousin to, he was living with me. One of my cousins was living with me, Clayton. I said, he drove me to this meeting and he said to me, "Lori, does this mean you're not going to do dope anymore?" I said, "Hell no, Clayton. I'm just going to this meeting." And I thought that there was a difference between alcohol and drugs. So I walked into that meeting. It was ironically up some stairs and into the room. I was so nervous. I was sweating. Um, I got all dressed up. I did, and I walked in, and the first thing that I heard there is that alcohol is a drug and that we can't afford to be confused about this. And it changed my life because this woman was celebrating, it was a birthday meeting, 7 years and 2 years. And I had never known anybody to be clean. I mean, without so much as a shooter for
Mhm.
7 years. I was blown away. It was a good thing that I was sitting down. And I I had absolutely no trust. I wasn't a trusting person. I was very suspicious, and I was just always waiting for the other shoe to drop because I had come from such a place of, I had been abused a lot of abuse I have sustained. Um, but I intuitively knew that they were telling the truth, that they weren't lying. I didn't ask her for a urine test. I just knew that she was telling the truth. And it was like a lightning bolt came through the ceiling right into my head. And it said, "Zot, if she can do it, so can you." And I haven't used since that day.
That's a miracle.
And the obsession to use was lifted. I mean, I'm just getting those shivering goosebumps all over my body right now because that is my story. It was like a burning bush moment. And when I stood up there, and I always stand and I always celebrate, always, I always celebrate my clean time, because that, if she hadn't been celebrating 7 years that day and the other woman 2 years, I don't know if it would have had the impact that it did on me. Um, but the voice, like I said, and I've learned that that voice, it's called the clarion. It's called a clarion voice. It's a clarion call, meaning clear. It's clear. It was as clear as a bell. And that voice does wake up as you stay clean.
I kind of had that moment too. Like I went to treatment for the drugs, and when I was there, I got honest with myself and I knew like I can't drink. I know that the first time I drink or get drunk, I'm going to be using drugs, right? And in that
Yeah.
moment, that moment of clarity, I was like, I can't fucking drink either. Like it's done. Like it goes hand in hand. I can't do it.
Yeah.
None at all is better than just a little bit, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. Um, Take us through like your first little bit of like in the rooms. Did you keep going back to the rooms after that, or?
um, yeah, that man, he met me at the meeting. Like I said, "I'll meet you at the meeting." And uh, we went for coffee afterwards. And we were taking a taxi. And we were waiting for the taxi. And this person pulls up, and it happened to be one of his drug dealers. Okay. So the three of us ended up going to Tim Hortons. And we sat there till 5 o'clock in the morning. And I told these people my entire life story, and they listened. And about 3 days later, so no, it was on a Thursday night. I came around the corner to the meeting at the detox, and the taxi driver was standing there, and he's been clean ever since. So, but the fellow who introduced me to recovery, he got 1 year clean, and then I haven't he went back to do more research, and I haven't seen him since. And there was no Facebook back then. I mean, people didn't even have cell phones. We didn't have answering machines on our phones. There was no answering machines. It was a different world. um So answering the phone was like Russian roulette. You'd be looking at it like, hmm, do I? Who is it? I wonder. There was no call display. Anyway,
Yeah,
yes,
putting
I
somebody.
continued to go to meetings. I was on fire for it. There's two times to go to a meeting when you're new, and that's when you want to and when you don't want to. Uh,
Yeah. Did you set any goals that first year? Like when you realized I can't drink and you realize like I'm gonna be going to these meetings, what was something you wanted to do in life at that point or work towards when you realized like I need a lifestyle change or that my life is gonna change from moving forward?
oh, yeah, I wanted it all. But to be honest with you, I didn't really make specific goals because I had done that so often in the past where I would like try to just quit everything all at once: sugar, sex, shoplifting, whatever. You know what I mean? Fill in the blank. I had a lot of, a lot of issues, right? So for me, when I crawled into this recovery process, uh, I surrendered and I had to quit doing what was killing me the fastest. So I didn't really have any other goal except for to stay clean just for this day. Um, so I allowed myself carte blanche. I drank pots and pots of coffee. It was a world of extremes. I stayed up for like all days and days at a time, it seemed, or slept for like 18 hours. It was crazy. And um, it was never a suggestion when I first got into a recovery. It was never a suggestion that you stay out of a relationship, and thank God for me, because had they have told me that I had to not only give up dope, including alcohol and all of it, and be celibate, I would have said two words for you, and they're not happy birthday. Okay, I would have gone back to where I came from. Okay, because that just would not have been. I was 28 years old. You're telling me I have to be like, I don't see the point in putting it off myself. Like having sex for the first time without being loaded is a rite of passage. You have to learn to do these things. You have to learn to be clean. It's life on life's terms without the use of drugs. It's not we're going to put this off to the side. So somehow I'm going to be able to handle rejection. Somehow I'm going to be able to handle that when I'm 1 year clean. That's insanity to me. So this guy, he was doing uh, I don't know if I could, but at the end of the meeting, we do this recognition for clean time sort of thing, just like we celebrate birthdays. And he was up there, and I was like, okay. So I was like, oh, finally, because I forced myself to introduce myself at every meeting as a newcomer. And I went up to get a hug at the end of the meeting. And in my mind, I was like, oh, finally, a good looking guy, right? Like I didn't yeah, so we ended up exchanging phone numbers. He helped me move and he never left. That's how I ended up in that relationship. Okay. Um, and it was crazy and it was wonderful. Like I learned so much from him. He had been around recovery for a long time. So I learned the word yet because there were certain things that I hadn't done. I was never a prostitute for money. You know what I mean? I just gave it away. I was a promiscuous person, right? I don't judge anybody. Like I actually kind of think, well, anyhow, um but I learned the word yet. Like I never did that drug yet, he would say. And we would get in the car and he'd be like, get in the car. We're going on a gratitude drive. And I learned about the drag. I didn't know about these places. I lived in the West End. I had never had any, and I didn't drive. So I didn't know about downtown. I didn't know about the drag. I didn't know how bad it is for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wasn't even really exposed to like, oh, there's homeless people. I come from a small town. It's not even a town where I come from. It's you blink and you miss it. It's sort of like on the road to the airport kind of thing. Um, so,
So you got lots of time in here. I'm gonna kind of like grill you with some questions at this point, just kind of recovery base. Feelings. How'd you deal with those at first?
oh wow,
Feelings suck. That's what I
it's
gotta
a
ask.
weird. No, they're wonderful.
They
Think
have their
about it.
moments. You know what? I think the good ones feel great. The bad ones I hate. They suck.
Ah,
You know.
there is no good or bad. There is no good or bad, but feeling makes it so. Thinking makes it so. That was Shakespeare. There is no good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Meaning there is always two sides to every coin. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter how thin that thing is. There's a one side and there's the other side. So life for me is not so much about uh, polarities. Yeah, so dealing with feelings, there's actually a book out there called Feelings, right? And like I told you that I had so I had to learn to identify.
Hmm.
Like you feel it in your body. You feel emotions in your body, and emotions, that's like energy in motion. Okay. So I learned to hone my feelings for my own constructive use. Like I ended up with that guy, he never left. I learned so much from him. I mean, I have to give honor where it is due, or respect, or whatever it is. I learned so much of what I don't want in that relationship, and what I simply won't tolerate. I am a human being and I deserve to be treated with respect. And this is something that I'm willing to give. That's one thing that I learned from him. I don't know if I should say his name or not, but whatever. I'm just going to keep him anonymous too, right? Um, whatever you're asking for, you have to be willing to give.
Hmm.
I learned that from this person. And about the feelings, um, I ended up getting some outside help because I had really big issues, sexual abuse issues. So I ended up going to a place that deals specifically with that. And those people are trained to deal with that. And I was in group therapy. It was intense, but we had to check in with the group therapy, which I did for 2 years. Um, we had to we had to check in with a feeling. We had to check in with a feeling. And you want to just, you don't want to just like, oh, I'm happy. You don't want to just, you want to be part of your own recovery. Get into it, man.
Hmm.
Dig your fork in there or pierce the peanut butter. Do it. It feels great. Just take a moment before it goes in. It's like, you know, um, be like that. With your feelings are your friends. You can never not be feeling. You're always feeling something.
Hmm.
It you're always thinking, you're always feeling.
Yep, I agree. Fun and recovery. What do you
I
do
love
for
it.
fun? What do you do for fun and recovery?
Oh man. There's a lot of things that I enjoy doing, like that just thrill me to no bits that might not seem like fun for other people. It doesn't necessarily have to even involve anybody else. I really enjoy reading. I um, I practice energy work. I do breath work. But for fun and recovery, I love music. I love music. That was a thing in my first year of recovery. I got to see Pink Floyd. Was it maybe in my second year? You know what? It was just into my second year. I got to see Pink Floyd, and I've traveled. I'm a certified scuba diver. That was a fantasy that would have when I was, stoned on the couch. Yeah, eating peanuts. Like, yeah, I'm gonna go scuba diving. Yeah, right. Like I could barely tie my shoes, but I do believe that lost dreams awaken and new possibilities arise as you stay clean. Uh, there is no limitation to what you can do. So I develop myself spiritually, energetically, mentally, physically. Uh, life, it's tempting to say recovery is a three-legged stool: spiritual, mental, and physical.
Hmm.
However, that is life itself. You don't have to be any type of addict to appreciate that there's a certain balance that you have to achieve. So what do I do for fun? Oh wow. I went to a house concert last weekend with my friend. It was the
Nice.
first sort of like outing. Um
Fuck COVID.
yeah, fuck
Fuck COVID.
COVID. Can we really say that? Yeah,
We can say whatever we want on here.
Yeah, okay. Well, I appreciate that.
There
Yeah.
is no censorship on this show.
Yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I'm surprised I have a tongue. I've bitten it so long and so often for the last, God Almighty, 2 years, right? Or more than, 2 years, 2 years. It's insane. Anyhow, what do I do for fun and recovery? When I rolled into this recovery thing, I remember thinking my life is over. My life is over. I'm never going to have fun again. And the my imagination was so limited at that point. The only thing that I could think of doing was bowling and bingo. That's all I could think of. Bowling and bingo, right?
That's kind of a recovery thing.
I was like,
Yeah.
"What?" Anyway, I did actually go bowling with people. I love it. I love bowling. It's fun. It's great, right? And when my mom was still alive, I did go to bingo with her. It was like a they used to smoke in those places, right? Well, we used to smoke in airplanes, right? Uh, you know, that is one goal that I wanted to do in my first year of recovery is I wanted to quit smoking, right? And I didn't, and it was with the help of my doctor at 18 months and he gave me this one word. He said, "Don't think of it as quit." Because he was like, "Well, have you ever quit smoking before?" I was like, "Oh, yeah." I started listing all the times I had quit smoking. Then he says to me, after quietly listened, he goes, "Well, then you never really quit, did you? You just stopped.
Hmm.
You just stopped." So he coached me on saying, like, trained me to say, I didn't quit smoking. I stopped smoking. But in February, it was 28 years. No, 27 years. 27 years since I've smoked a cigarette.
Wow, that's impressive. I think I'm like at 3 months almost. I keep telling myself
Perfect.
that's a $50,000
That
cigarette.
you are. Yeah, you are a non-smoker right
Yep.
now. Right now.
Yep.
Nailed it.
Oh yeah, you see this? I don't know if everybody can see it or not in the videos. I got this skull here, and it's
Yeah.
all full of
Lollipops.
yeah, what are these friggin' Tootsie Pop suckers? You
Perfect.
know, I was eating those till I started seeing
Yep.
my belly grow a little bit bigger with
Absolutely.
five
I'm a
grams of
big
sugar.
fan. I'm a big fan. For
Yeah,
the first year of my recovery, it was carte blanche. I did whatever I want. I ate whatever I want. Pots and pots. Like I told you, I no expenditure. I totally immersed myself in whatever I wanted. The only thing I couldn't do was dope. I had to stop doing what was killing me the fastest. Right?
makes sense
Yeah.
to me. Um, what's one of the greatest gifts you've been given in recovery? You know, what would you sum up as like, I don't know, one of the greatest gifts you've received?
Um,
It's hard over 30 years, but I'm sure there's different parts and different times too.
I would have to say it's like I have become who I was meant to be all along before the dope or before this abuse or whatever it was. I am authentic. I I have a connection with my not my. I have a connection, a conscious connection with source energy that I choose to call God. And I learned that from my first whatever partner is like um it's one syllable and you know what I mean. So I could call it higher power, source energy. Those are so many different words and syllables. But this thing, I am connected and I am aware of it. Um, so it is an enormous gift that just, it's like a golden thread that I can look back in my life. I can see that it's always been there. But my recognition of it, it's like I'm playing with something and it responds to me. Life responds to me. You can have whatever you want. You can never it can never not be held like withheld from you. Whatever you're asking for, it's coming. The only thing that ever stops it from coming into fruition is your own self. The thing that is asking, like you can stop it. Does that make any sense? There's so many gifts. It's not a thing, it's more of a feeling, it's more of a knowing. That's it. That's the
That's a good
word.
choice of words for it. Yeah.
That's the word. It's a knowing. It's not a belief. Like it's like I said, if I drop this pen, do I believe it's going to drop or do I know it's going to drop? Well, I know it's going to drop. So I have a sense of knowing, and where a lot of people, especially with the world, let's talk about it, with what's going on, a lot of people are worried. There's a lot of illusion.
Hmm.
I have a sense of knowing that everything is fantastic. um, we are we are making it right now, the whole human race.
Listening to hear you speak there, what's something you're passionate about today?
I am just passionate about life itself. I'm passionate about the future, and like I'm passionate about this this energy that I'm tapping into, the knowledge that, and I'm learning through direct experience that I can direct my life. I don't have to be a victim. I was a wounded cheesy when I got here. And today I am empowered. So I don't believe powerlessness is not part of my vocabulary. It is not. I never talk about, and I never tell people that they're powerless
Hmm.
ever. Um, I believe that we have enormous uh, capability that we're only just understanding as a human species, as a human, like as the race. So I'm learning that what I say, what I say, I get. I can speak it into being, and I'm in the process of doing that. I just recently, a year ago, embarked on a career, and I've never had a career before. I've only ever just had jobs. Like I worked as a bartender. I worked in emergency road service for um I worked in restaurants a lot. I had a job working for PepsiCo, stocking chips for Frito-Lays with steel-toed boots, and I had a phobia of driving when I first got here, and the fear just left one day. It's like these steps, like I am part of a 12-step recovery program and I have worked them over and over again, and they do work. That's the point.
Hmm.
They work. They transform you. It's a tool of transformation. You will become somebody that you couldn't even imagine when you were like riling and low self-esteem. So the phobia of driving just left one day. And then I became a courier. I drove professionally for 10 years. But now I'm in a career, and I am learning that there's no, just because I'm 57. Yeah, I said it. Okay, it doesn't matter, man. You know,
Yep. Yeah,
like
I like to joke and say I'm never getting old. I'm just not getting any younger, right? Never getting old, just not getting any younger.
I believe that we can reverse the signs of aging. I'm really really into health, like not health, but like energy. I guess
Mm.
what I'm really most passionate about is like sort of like energy, I guess.
Makes sense.
Feng shui and reiki and healing. I do breath work every day, breath
Oh.
work. I mean, think about it. That's your life. Your every breath is different. There's no two breaths, no matter how long you live, are there's no two breaths that are the same. And each breath is is a couple. There's in and there's out. There's acceptance, there's release. Okay? So the first breath when you're born is the first one. That's the parentheses, like, and the last breath when you expire, when you exhale, that's the last one. Your whole life is contained within there. And the bigger you breathe, the bigger you live.
Mm.
By the way, nothing I'm saying is original. The only original thought that I can ever really think of saying is something what I call freelance thinking. You don't want to do that. You don't want to just be mindless and not be aware of what it is you're thinking, because whatever has your attention has your life. Whatever you are thinking about, you are bringing into being. And that is a law, just like the law of gravity. It it is it's very indifferent. It doesn't judge you. It doesn't care if you had Cheerios for breakfast or if you go to church on Sunday. It doesn't matter. You're the one who gets to decide what you're thinking.
Hmm.
No matter what happens, we can have, so, I've had some, I had a lot of victim mentality when I was, certainly before I found recovery, and then for a long time into it. That life was, why did they do that to me? Why is this happening to me? It's not happening to me. It's happening for me. And it's an indicator. If you don't like the way your life is going, you have the power to change it. You can even change your life while you're in jail. And I know this because I did service there for a long time.
Hmm.
I did service. I got into service from day one. But I would go in there and I would say to these people, the only difference between me and you is that I didn't get caught. All right. And I believe that I didn't get caught so that I could go into those places and carry the message of recovery to people, that there is nothing you can you can direct your thinking, And I don't care what happens. What happened before, that's all just a matter of so what? What are
Mhm.
you going to do now? And you can change your thinking. So it doesn't really matter how long I've been headed in the direction of, say, in a certain direction. At any moment, I have the power in my mind to turn around and face the sun. So I don't have to walk into the darkness. I can turn the light on at any time.
Mhm.
There's nothing that resists the light. There's nothing in the whole known universe that resists the light. So, meaning you can take the inkiest, darkest corner of your life, your experience, and you can shine a light on that and see that it's all illusion. There is nothing to fear. There's an acronym, there's a whole bunch of them, but the acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real.
I've heard that before.
False evidence appearing real, or the other one is fuck everything and run,
Mhm.
or face everything and recover,
Yep.
right? But that false evidence appearing real. And this is actually interesting with what's going on in the world. You know, um, is it real just because somebody's on social media telling you that it is?
Well, I heard some too about it, like being your truth, right? Like, do I believe swear words are bad? No, but could it be ingrained in me that, you know what, should I believe, say, my parents say it's bad? Do I all of a sudden take on their perspective as my own truth when it's not? And it's learning to try and decipher, like, what's truly my truth, right? And yeah, for example, like swear words don't bother me at all, you know, it's not my truth that swearing is bad or a lack of intelligence, right? Um,
It's an expression,
mhm.
right? And like, to be honest with you, if I didn't have swearing, I never would have been able to stop smoking, because the emotions, it was like I thought that I was feeling, when you put the dope down, your emotions wake up. There is something, but your spirit wakes up. So everything becomes amplified. So when I stopped smoking, I mean, I thought I was feeling before, but cigarettes, like anything, like coffee, all of those things, stimulants, they do uh they numb your feelings.
100%.
They numb your feelings. So when I stopped smoking, it was as if the amplifier was plugged in and I could hear like it was really tuned up. So you can direct that. You can direct, like, energy, it's just energy. So uh my first partner in recovery, it's not that he betrayed me, it was just that he preferred to have sex with a lot of different people while we were together. And I did perceive that as a betrayal,
Makes
okay?
sense.
Um, and I felt like I was a victim. And this is I'll say it. Yeah. Well, so I get a phone call one day from a mutual friend of me and this guy that we were broken up. He moved in. He called me up at work one day and he said, "Yeah, I'm moving in with so and so." I said, "What?" And he was a practical joker. I thought he was joking. And I got home and he had moved out, moved in with another woman. And then he
Oh,
came to the meeting the next day in a trench coat. I'm like, "What the fuck, man?" Anyway, people thought it was a practical joke of his, but we broke up, whatever. And or no, he left me. Right? That's what it was. I didn't have the balls to do it. I knew it was never going to work out. And I was just waiting for the day that it was going to get bad enough that, he left, because I never made those decisions, right? But today I do. I make decisions all the time, right? And stand by them. But anyway, I made a decision. Okay, so I get a phone call saying, "Yeah, so and so's worried about you. I was talking to so and so today. They're really worried about you." I was like, "Oh, yeah," I was irritated, pissed off, right? Irritated, right? Uh, yeah, they're worried that you're going to slash. I said, "Slash? Slash? I was never a slasher. That's not part of my story." I said, not only am I not going to slash over his mangy ass, but I am going to, I went from, I'm going to prosper. That's what I said. Not
mm,
only am I not going to slash, I am going to prosper. And in that moment, something awoke in me and I went from victim. It was like a light switch.
mm,
Quite often recovery it's like a dimmer. It happens slowly over a long period of time, or over a period of time. You don't necessarily notice it, but this was like a light switch. Boom. And I went from, in that moment, from a victim to a victor. And I started to say, I deserve good things. And I believed it. It is my birthright. So it's not that, oh, I had to earn it or somebody had to give it to me. It's that it is my birthright. Be-
mhm.
but because of the fact that I was born onto this planet as a human being and that the heart is beating right now, this is my right. to prosper and to be free and to express myself and to be creative. And I believe that we are, all of us, co-creators with this thing that brought life into being in the first place. Or
Yeah.
if there ever was a first place. It's so mind-boggling. But the thing is this, we each of us have a heart beating. Whatever that power is, whatever you want to call that, that is your life.
Yeah.
And it never disappears. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, and we are all energy. So when we leave the physical body, if that's, if we have to pass through the thing called death, then you just get recycled. You have another embodiment. That's truly what I believe. You don't have to. When I was 11 years old, and I was so it's an interesting thing. I was sent to this French school, and I never. It was a struggle. I didn't speak the language. I was shamed to the core because I was from the country and I wore different clothes. Like my mother made my own clothes. I came from like a pretty, you know, um, not poverty, but a wasn't rich family, right? Whereas the people that I was in school with, they were the elite of, their parents were all like, oh, just I wanted to be somebody else, But anyway, um, I never read, and then one year for Christmas, my brother gave me a Nancy Drew book. I was 11 years old, and I was astounded to realize that I could read it and I could understand it. And I became an avid reader.
Hmm.
From that moment, I carry books with me. I mean, my passion, I guess, yeah, maybe books, knowledge,
I like that.
connection,
That's one thing I tell people. Like, if you're ever in that lull, where all of a
Mhm.
sudden things kind of feel stagnant, that's the moment that you got to start learning something new. That's the time where you got to
Mhm.
educate yourself, and that'll give you that passion of that next step as to, I don't know, that next step to learning something, right? So if you're ever in that lull, yeah, it's time to educate yourself about something you've always wanted to know about. Like, start to engage the mind a bit and not test yourself, but like,
Oh no,
I don't
do
know how
it.
educate. Yeah.
Do it. Do it. I started doing yoga like I did yoga for 3.5 years in a studio, and it was fantastic. I was in better shape. I'm in better shape today than I was when I was 25. I mean, during the yoga, like I could hold the plank for 2 minutes. It's a mindset. I- I- There's 5% action and 95, or it's not even 5% action. It's all mindset. It's 99.99999% of all of life is up here. It's in your mind, your imagination.
Matter of
Okay.
perspective. Yeah.
And then the 1%, or even less than 1%, is the physical world and the tangible doing. Okay, I am going to pick up this pen. Before I picked up that pen, it had to be in my mind.
Mhm.
There's nothing, you cannot create, you can't do anything.
Yeah, makes sense. I got a couple questions left here
All
for you.
right.
Okay, last one is do you think you're ever cured?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm recovered. I don't like, I mean, do you mean like from addiction? Is that what you're
And it's,
saying?
yeah, like
Okay,
are you
yeah.
ever cured?
I believe so. I
What
the
what does it look like to you then, being cured in your perspective?
freedom, freedom, expansion.
Nice. Nice. And then my last question is, we're gonna sum it up here. I want you to share with the listeners something that I'd like you to share with the listeners, maybe new in recovery. You're, I don't even know what the right word is. What's something you'd like to leave with the listeners?
You can have anything you want. You just have to know what it is. I am living the life of my dreams today. I'm learning and expanding. I'm with my soulmate. We have a beautiful home. We live in harmony. You can I have traveled. I've been to Egypt. You can do anything. If you're if you can hold it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. I took a bunch of notes. Haven't read any of them, but it was an interesting thing to do this. The advice I would say is to be curious and open-minded as to why are we here? What is this life about? Forget addiction. Don't focus on that. That's a thing of the past. That's just a stepping stone that brought you to recovery, and be grateful for it, because it will open doors that you can't even imagine right now. A whole world is going to open up for you. This is a world of magic and of creating. We are here to create. That's it. Yeah, that's what I would say.
I have to shut that off real quick. And we both
Oh,
have
I
to shut
see.
it.
Shall I keep talking? Because I would say, look at the bigger picture. There's right before you, the visible world, the tangible world is a 3 inch. It's a 3 inch. It's a 3 inch radius. That's all you can see. But in reality, it's more than 100 feet in diameter. But you just can't see it. So 99.999% of what you want is off your radar. You can't see it. It's in your imagination. You have to focus on what you want. Find out. Discover who you are. Allow it to unfold. You came here for a reason. We all did, right? We all came here for a purpose.
Yeah.
This is not a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Life starts after, it's got to make some memories, right? So life can be amazing.
Life is amazing.
Mhm.
It is amazing right now.
Awesome. Well, I want to say thank you. Sorry about that. You know what? That alarm that went off was my reminder to eat.
Oh,
I have to set an alarm on my phone to tell me when to
okay.
eat, just so
Okay.
to make sure it's part of my taking care of self, right? Or
Yeah.
self care,
Yeah,
to
sure.
busy during the day and to
Right.
make sure I eat my meals, right? So
Interesting.
hungry, angry,
Water.
lonely, tired, right?
Yeah, water is also very, very important. And like you can give a blessing to this, and then when you drink it, it's going to have that impact on your body. So take a moment to say thank you to everything, to life itself.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I want to say thank you to all our listeners too out there. Thanks for sharing your time with us. And I'd love to leave you with this: make lots of memories, take lots of pics, and show the world your smile. So that's my outro. So thank you for
Awesome.
spending your time with us today, Lauren.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt.
Appreciate it.
That was awesome, I think.
It was great.